Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. The southern border is a massive, massive threat to America and to the future of our country for a lot of different reasons. Now, I've had guests on like Carrell, and we've talked extensively about what's happening on the southern border, the criminals coming across, the special interest aliens. We've talked about how much of a threat that is. But now there's a new threat that's emerging as it relates to this, and that's literally the threat of civil war. And there's also now intel coming out that people have brought forth, Alex Jones being one of them, talking about this concern for a white supremacist insurrection type event at the southern border. It really has a lot of the makings of setting up a false flag event. And a false flag event happening at a place like Eagle Pass, where tensions are so high, could literally be the single event that kicks off a civil war in America. It is that close. And we have to be very sober about this. We have to look at this information with a very level head and understand where America could be in a few months, just a few months, if this continues. So joining us today is Carrell, who is an ex-border agent. He spent 24 years on the border and then managing large teams of border agents. He's got incredible intel. And so we're going to be diving into a discussion, talking about what's happening at the border, what the sentiment of the agents is down there, but also the concern of this false flag attack, the concern of civil war, and what this looks like for America. So, folks, please enjoy this interview with Carrell. I also remind you that every show I do, in addition to being on Rumble, is also a podcast. So if you want to listen instead of watch, go to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, etc. Search for Man in America, subscribe, follow me on there. You'll get all this information, no paywall. All right, folks, enjoy the interview. JJ, it is such a pleasure to have you back on the show, man. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me back. I think it's an incredible topic. I think it's the greatest threat to our republic. So I appreciate you allowing me back on another time to discuss what's happening on the border. And it is, unfortunately, the danger has exponentially increased since the last time you and I have spoken.
Oh, I know. I mean, when we first had a show together, I think it was after I heard you on Naomi Wolf, and I've been following what you've been doing with Brian O'Shea, and that was the topic at that point, was the SIAs, the special interest aliens, and the data you were sharing with that was just mind blowing. But it seems like in the past month or so that what's been happening at the borders just cracked wide open, and it's gone from not just a border invasion, right? Not just a party, right? A coup, which is what we have in our current White House, knowingly keeping the borders open and flooding these criminals into our country. And not all criminals, but a lot of them are. And so it's gone from that to now the situation where we had Texas trying to take things into their own hands, which is really how things should work in the United States of America, right? The state governments have control of their own states and the federal government should be backing off. But we've seen now the weaponization of the federal agencies again, over and over and over again. But now that there's this border war emerging, I'll pull up the map here that we were talking about before we started recording. We've now got almost a 50-50 divide of states that are saying, look, we're going to stand with Texas and stand against this federal overreach, even send people in like what DeSantis is doing, to states saying, oh, we're not going to get involved in that. You have that happening. You've got warnings of false flags. You've got these, God's Army. You have different patriotic American groups going down to the border. I mean, it just looks like what's being set up right now is, I hate saying it, but almost like this is what it looks like when you're heading into some sort of civil war. Like and I think that's actually the long-term plan with this. But I threw a lot of stuff out there and I've got some other videos I want to show, but I just want to see what your thoughts are seeing all this.
Well, I do believe that it is a false flag event is coming from this perspective. Think about January. What happened on January 6th? We have Americans arrested and rounded up en masse. Now we have Americans that have been denied their civil liberties under our Constitution, and they have been in jail for years, some of them in solitary confinement for long periods of time, not even stepping foot on the state capital, the nation's capital, just being there or being chatter on the internet. What does that tell you about our freedom to assemble? It means it's under attack. So when you bring, and you can see it on the videos people are posted, you got thousands of truckers and et cetera rolling down our interstates down to the border in Texas, which, if you can imagine, it's a bottleneck, right? You're going to one little place in Texas. It's called Eagle Pass. There's not 1,000 people in Eagle Pass. It's a nothing place. So, and you're going to a place called Shelby Park. So why wouldn't Antifa groups get involved in this like they did January 6th? Why wouldn't the federal government, which has already been proven that they had hundreds of plants inside of the J6 event, why wouldn't they go down there? And I wrote about this on Substack, and I said, when you bring all of these patriots down that know that there is a better chance than not that the federal government is going to try to do something to them, they feel hopeless, their vote doesn't count, they feel disenfranchised, and then you bring in, then you have the Army, National Guard of Texas and the Department of Public Safety and Border Patrol rank and file saying, I'm not doing it. We're aligned. And the federal government sends in the Army. And I lived this. I controlled National Guard in units that I ran. And I ran these big Border Patrol stations. You got type A personalities, Seth. You got guys that it just becomes, okay, this is mine, you're not taking it. And all it takes is one guy to pull that trigger and a round goes down range and it's sparked. The Civil War is sparked. And then the moment that these disenfranchised Americans, and they have a righteous claim for being disenfranchised, they're seeing their country be destroyed, and they get their patriot shot, they're going to unload. These are all Texans. These are all Americans that are coming down with arms. It's a combustible situation. And I do believe that the federal government, I don't take any joy in saying this, the federal government hates their own people. And if you don't believe that, or you don't agree with me, and that's okay if you don't agree, then explain to me why our federal government has allowed in almost 10 million people in 3 years, that's their data, that have been arrested, and has done nothing to stop it. Why? You can't give me a solid, reasonable answer why. So I believe that America is rushing to a civil war. Now, just the aesthetics of looking at that map that you showed, and then when you say it out loud, 25 states have aligned with Texas. Okay, wait a minute. How many states are there? Oh, that's half. So you have half the nation is aligned. And if you really want to squeeze that down, you have middle America, just the crazy left coastlines. And strangely enough, Washington, Oregon, California, then you go into North Carolina, which is run by Senator Tillis, who is a full-on open borders advocate, all the way at New York and Maine. Every one of those states are screaming for federal help because their social services have been destroyed and crime skyrocketing because of illegal aliens. This is a dangerous time in America on multiple fronts.
And so I want to play there's about a minute and 30-second video from Alex Jones that he put out about some intel that he's received about a potential false flag. So I'll play this quickly and then we can dive back in.
We've got a great team on the border right now, Chase Geyser and some amazing other people. I'm not going to say their names. And they met with good federal agents today who showed them the memo that they're saying imminent white supremacist attacks in Eagle Pass. Now, whether that's a real threat or not, the point is good people gave us this information. It fits into the whole Biden narrative to demonize the American people and to try to legitimize a totally open border and all the crime and all the sex trafficking that's happening. So obviously, we believe it's probably a false flag. There are some actual crazy people out there as well in this whole crisis that America is in right now. I'd say 90% chance that, yeah, they're probably provocateurs. But regardless, this is real intel. This is real information. We've got crew down there right now. We're reporting on it all at Infowars.com/show. I'll be on the air tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central, on my regular show, covering it all as well. But our crew is down there at the border, and this comes directly from high-level sources. So this is major breaking news that the feds have told the major Border Patrol facility there in South Texas, prepare for imminent white supremacist attack on the Border Patrol. So we're getting this out ahead of time. Hopefully this exposure will stop it if it's actually a real plan. I don't know all the answers. I don't know if it's a false flag. I don't know if it's false info from the feds. I don't know if it's a real. I don't know. But the report from the feds and the memo is 100% real. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's pray for the Border Patrol and others down there. And just thank God we got eyes and ears on this. We're going to stop this. God bless and good luck.
So with what he's saying there, I mean, obviously, there's not some internal memo saying, "Hey, we're going to have a false flag," but you can see the writing on the wall and I believe that his source is probably accurate. From the perspective that it makes sense that they would. We have these, God's Army, we have other different patriot groups going down to the border, similar to what happened with J6. Right, we had patriots across America going and basically saying, "Look, it's our constitutional right to protest and to voice our opinions," and people believing what they're doing was upholding the Constitution. This becomes a really tricky scenario too, because if you look at what's happening with the border down there, and you have, say, just average American citizens that care about our Constitution, care about our borders, saying that, look, this is federal overreach. This is what the founding fathers talked about. They told us to throw off tyranny when we got to this place. It's really setting up a really tricky scenario. And when you hear the language like that in a memo released to the intelligence community saying that there are these white supremacist groups and they're worried about an attack, it's really setting up the stage for a false flag event. And the thing is that maybe it's not even a false flag event. Maybe it's actually just they know that there's going to be patriots down there, probably well armed. And if they can get one of them, like you said, if they can get one of them to pop a shot off at something, right, that then opens this up and then opens, say we have gunfire, et cetera, then they're going to bring in more troops. They're going to bring it just the whole thing. There's a powder keg just sitting down there. And it seems like the Biden administration is just sitting there flicking matches at it, just hoping one of those matches will ignite the powder keg.
I agree, and isn't it interesting that Alex Jones was a fringe nut job conspiracy theorist for decades, and majority of everything he discussed comes true. And I think that is sadly the world we live in. We live in a world where tyranny is ruling, and it's not just in America. I just talked to someone last night on our podcast from Canada. It's the same game plan across the Western nations on the globe. But when you focus on white supremacy, what an insane phrase that is. Can you explain to me or give me any examples of white supremacy since Joe Biden has taken office where crimes have committed across America by roaming hate groups of white men? Where are they? I've never seen them. And if there was, men like me would denounce it immediately. And I'm as white as you can get. I would denounce it immediately. This is absurdity. There's no white supremacy. If you want to look at what's happening in America, white individuals are being attacked throughout our major metropolitan cities, not by one or two people, by hordes of people are stomping white people to the ground. This is just part of the playbook of the left. They're going to set up scenarios. They're going to project all of their sins onto us and then go point, look, they're terrible. When you look at the way the left protests, they burn buildings down, they kill people, they rape people. You look at J6ers or you look at what's happening down in Eagle Pass. When we protest, it's orderly. We actually pick up our trash after we leave. We leave the place cleaner than we were. That's the difference. What has to happen, and I hate that this has to be the way it is, and it's going to happen. They're going to force us. The right side of this equation is going to have to get ugly. There is no other way to change America. People say, well, how are you going to change this? Unless it is almost a scorched earth, meaning the next president comes in and he's a very powerful man and says, like Donald Trump just said, we're going to have the largest deportation force in American history. Everybody is to remove themselves from America. If not, we are going to seek you out and then burn the the FBI and the CIA and all of those major organizations to the ground and rebuild them. I don't know what that rebuild looks like, but we are in a battle for America. And the rhetoric of the old days, like if you and I were talking about this 10 years ago, I would say, God, that's Seth Pohlhaus. He's on the fringe. Like I can see, but God, that's 50, 100 years, maybe. And there's got to be major situations pop up. Now I'm talking to people and I'm like, if you don't believe this is happening, you're either part of it or you're a fool. That's how crazy and insane our world has gotten, Seth. And when you look at the border and you look at the numbers of people pouring across, it's frightening. Look, I don't get concerned about much, but when I look at my monthly data that I get from agents and from actually government sources, their own DHS numbers, I just sit back and I think, would you have believed this, JJ, 3 years ago when you retired under Biden's first year? Would you ever believe that it would get? And I would honestly tell you, never would I believe that this would ever occur. We're at 3.3 million, 3.2 million people arrested in FY 2023. Holy mother of God. I can add another minimum 3 million of getaways. We're looking at 6 million, approximately 500,000 people a month coming through our open borders. Seth, let's just make sure that our audience understands, because we talk about numbers in America, trillions, billions, trillions. There's hundreds of millions of there, and we kind of get lost in the numbers. But I want you to understand, just in the month of December, 371,000 illegal aliens were arrested. Only 3% were deported, meaning 359,000 were released into America. Now, try to put this in perspective, because I think there's some times, even 371,000, you kind of get lost in that number and you go, well, that's not that bad. That's how we've been conditioned. Let's just put it in perspective. This past January, we had the college playoff. You had Alabama versus Michigan. They played in the Rose Bowl, the beautiful Rose Bowl in Pasadena. 100,000 people in the Rose Bowl. Since December, because the numbers have spiked in December, every 8 days, Seth, the Rose Bowl is filled to capacity with illegal aliens from 180 nations across Earth. And then at midnight on the 8th day, I come down and I open up the gates on the north side and I remove everyone, all 100,000, out onto the streets of America. And at the same time, Seth, I open the southern gates to the stadium. And the next 8 days, I fill it back up. And then I release them. That's happening every 8 days in America. I'm filling up the Rose Bowl and I'm releasing everyone there. If you've ever been to a football game, a major college or NFL game, think of the whole stadium as illegal aliens. Yeah, that gets filled up, that gets released every 8 days into America. Now, Seth, if you show that visual, and I tell you every 8 days, the data is indisputable. I'm not even talking about the getaways. I'm just focused on what DHS tells me, which I know is just an absolute lie. That gets released into America every 8 days, and you're telling me that your federal government is not doing this on purpose? Come on, man. You have to use Joe Biden's phrase, come on, man. You have to be a moron. You have to be an ideological moron to not believe that our nation's being destroyed. How does a nation sustain? What if I told you that's happening every year? You would go, that can't happen every year. No way. We got to stop it. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you every 8 days, Seth.
Hey, folks, I've got a quick message for you. So I'm sure you've heard a lot of people, myself included, talking about the importance of buying precious metals, gold and silver. But what's really behind that? Is just a thing of, hey, buy this gold, buy this silver, right? Or is there something deeper that we should be looking at? So I recently came across some figures about house prices. So in 1930, the average family home was approximately $4,000. Fast forward to 2023, the average family home is just over $400,000. So you have to ask yourself, why is that? Is it because things have just gotten more expensive? No, it's actually because the dollar has lost 99% of its value since 1930, right? When people talk about the collapse of the dollar or inflation, this is what it means. Now, let's take a look at gold. So in 1930, if you wanted to purchase your home in gold, it would take approximately 200 gold coins. So 200 gold coins would purchase the average family home in 1930, about $4,000. Now, if you, instead of buying a home with that gold or cash, you set those aside, if you set aside $4,000 in cash in 1930, it would be worth $4,000 today. What can you buy with $4,000? Can you buy a family home? No, you can't even buy a crappy used car. But if you set aside $4,000 worth of gold coins in 1930, which is 200 gold coins, 1 ounce coins, that would be worth approximately $400,000 today. And this is the key lesson about precious metals. It's not about getting rich. It's about putting your money into an asset that protects you against inflation and against the destruction of the currency, which is what happens to all fiat currencies, especially now we're in the end days of the dollar. And so that's why it's important, maybe not all of your money, but a portion of your money, a portion of what you have, I highly recommend putting it into precious metals of gold and silver, because what it's doing is it's protecting you. This is an asset that has stood the test of time, not just stood the test of time since the 1930s. We're talking about the rise and fall of civilizations. Gold was used to buy houses back in ancient Rome. It's still around. It's an asset that will forever have its value. So folks, if you want to do this and you need someone that you can trust, there's no person I can recommend more than Dr. Kirk Elliott. He's a very good friend of mine. He's a strong Christian patriot, and he's out to really help people to protect their savings and what you've worked for against the destruction of the dollar, not to mention also protecting it against the dangers of central bank digital currencies. So to learn more about this, go to goldwithseth.com or call 720-605-3900. Again, that's goldwithseth.com or 720-605-3900. Both those places will allow you to set up a quick appointment where you can talk to a wealth advisor that will help get you started on this path.
And when you start looking at 100,000 people, I'm talking special interest aliens, I'm talking straight up terrorists, I'm talking criminals from across the globe. At the very worst, the very minimum of the criminality of those people in the 100,000 is tens of thousands of people that are illiterate in their own language, have less than a grade school education, and will be completely and utterly dependent on the federal government and state welfare system that should be helping Americans. But they've drained our coffers. Look at New York, Chicago, Maine, the state of Massachusetts. They've all claimed states of emergency. States of emergency. They have nowhere to put these people anymore. It's crazy. These are crazy times.
So I know that you're tied in with a lot of the border agents, right? So you spent, I think it was 24 years,
Yes.
working on the border, and you've got a lot of intel feeding up to you still. So what are you hearing from people that are on the ground, the people that are border agents, whether it's Texas or Arizona, et cetera? What's the sentiment? Like, what are you hearing? What is the people that are on the ground facing this? What's the threat that they're feeling, that they're conveying to you?
Well, the number one thing is they're completely demoralized. Absolutely. You have men and women that literally swore an oath to put the gun on their hip and their badge on their chest that I'm going to enforce immigration laws that the Congress has set forth and put forth into law. They're not doing that. None of them are doing Border Patrol work. They're babysitting, they're holding babies, they're driving illegal aliens back and forth from the hospital, driving them and releasing them, street releasing. They become smugglers in effect. They're demoralized, they're angry, they're resentful, and the last thing that they are is hopeless. They have no hope that this is going to change, and it has become normalized into their life. They're at the height of the Border Patrol. We had 21,300 agents. We're down to 15,000. And we're going to grow into the 14,000s rapidly because everyone that's on the edge that they can retire, they're just hanging on, They're going to hit their 20 to 25 years and then they're gone. And they cannot recruit. They've already started recruiting bonuses of $35,000 and nobody's biting. They're like, go pound sand. I'm not doing this. So when you look at the totality, so I have sources from Texas all the way to San Diego. And it's interesting. The one thing that's very interesting, and I've always said this, and people, they can't grasp this, but America does not run our immigration system. The Mexican cartels run it. And the way that is Mexican cartels determine who crosses, what type of individual, how many, and where they're going to go once they get here. So for a while, San Diego, literally the very western part of San Diego on the Pacific Ocean kind of dried up. Nothing happened, went from thousands and thousands of people to nothing. And now it's Texas. Now it's moving back. So now you're getting all kind of exotic, we used to call them exotics, special interest aliens, Yemen, Sudanese, continent of Africa, crazy Kastans across the globe are now pouring into Acumba, California, which is the very eastern part of San Diego County, and moving back into Chula Vista and Imperial Beach. So there's an ebb and flow to how the cartels are moving their people. At the end of December, we are looking at anywhere from 15 to 20,000 a day were coming across our border. Right now, Seth, the Border Patrol agents are so demoralized because there's so many people pouring across the border that they're setting up little tent cities on our side and living there because they have to wait days and weeks for the Border Patrol to have enough manpower to go arrest them, bring them in. So as our stations are packed with thousands upon thousands of people, there's tens of thousands of people living on the north side of the border fence waiting to they're cooking, they're playing soccer, they're just meandering around waiting for the Border Patrol to come get them. So the cartels are just moving their product over the border. The Border Patrol also tells me that there is not one single law enforcement activity, proposal, strategy at all. They're not doing their job. 80% of the border is unmanned. Think of what I just said. 80% of the border at any given time, there's almost 2,000 miles of the southern border. Over 1,600 miles of that 2,000-mile border has no one. No one. In my 24-year career, that never happened. Listen, Border Patrol is coming on their 100-year anniversary from 1924. I am telling you and telling your audience, for 97 years of this 100 years, we never did what we're doing in these past 3 years. And the reason why we never did that, because what we're doing now is against the law, not against policy. It's breaking all the policy. I'm telling you, they are enforcing unconstitutional orders on these Border Patrol agents and CBP officers, and they are unconstitutionally fulfilling unlawful, illegal orders that break laws. And no one says a damn thing about it. That's the shocking thing.
So whether it's the border agents or other folks that are down there working, one thing that I've often wondered is how long people will go taking orders from a rogue government. And this is it's an important question because
It is.
we're seeing that obviously that there's many different aspects of the federal government, the federal agencies that have been turned against the people. I've interviewed ex FBI agents, et cetera, where they've actually said that there's actually still a lot of good people in there, and they're kind of waking up and actually turning away from these organizations. But one thing that I wonder is, what happens when say a federally controlled army or group of people is asked to turn against their own fellow Americans, and whether they'll get to a point where they have to bring in whether it's UN troops or something else, because I just can't imagine that there's that many Americans, even if they're serving in the army and they have to follow orders, but it's like when they hit that moral dilemma of what happens when the orders are going against the actual Constitution. And so that's kind of where my mind goes in exploring what the potential outcomes are this because what the potential outcomes are. And I think it's also why they're rushing to fill the ranks of the army with these illegal immigrants and with people that,
Mhm.
why are they recruiting all the LGB, people and all these like, really kind of radical ideologies into the army because they know that these are people that would probably could care less about the Constitution. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think that's a great question because internally amongst Border Patrol agents and retired Border Patrol agents, there's a friend of mine, a good old retired Border Patrol agent that runs a podcast and a Facebook group called Old Patrol HQ, which is just old Border Patrol agents headquarters, right? That's his name. And there is a giant discussion, if you will, of guys that are questioning agents today, saying, how can you do this? Right? There's great sentiment. And this is agents in the field too are saying, how are we continue to follow these unconstitutional orders? And there a lot of guys saying you got to stop. But at the same time, I want the audience to put themselves into a Border Patrol agent. I'm married. I have 3 kids. I have a mortgage. I have private school. I have a car payment. I have everything. I'm 18 years in the patrol. I have 2 more years. And I want you to think about what the mindset of a Border Patrol agent is he's not outside looking in like me and you, even though I'm inside it, but I'm out looking in. They're inside this belly of the beast and it's chaotic. It's horrible. These agents are just trying to go get through the day and get the hell out of there and just try to disassociate from the treason that's going on. But that agent is looking outward, not inward like we are. And he sees America that hates him. He sees politicians that demonize him and call him Nazi and a racist, and they do Nazi and racist things. And they get hardened. Those agents get hardened. And know what they say? F all you people. I'm going to do 2 years and I'm going to get my pension and I'm getting out. Why would I not follow those orders? You don't care. You haven't done anything. Where's the Republicans? They stab us in the back. So they feel isolated and they say, I don't care. I know it's hard to hear. I don't care. Get me. I have August 2025 and I'm out. And I have my pension, my health care, my 401k, and I'm out. I'm never doing this again. I know I know exactly what those guys are feeling like. I've been there, not at the level that they are under Biden, but I've been there where I've said, I can't do this. Look what our government's doing to us. That looks sophomoric compared to the evil that's going on now. But there will come a time, and we've discussed this internally when I was in the Border Patrol amongst guys that I think are the Border Patrol agents. I want people to understand are extremely patriotic, highly intelligent, like really highly academically credentialed individuals, right? And we do work that the average American could never stomach. They could never go down in the middle of the night in a valley on the border and know that I got 20 people that just crossed and I'm going by myself to go get them. I know that 99.9% of Americans do not have the stones to do that. But I did it and my fellow agents did it night after night after night. And we did it. We've been shot at, stabbed, broke our bones, but we just do it because that's what we're getting paid to and that's what we swore an oath to do. But we had a lot of internal discussions about what are we going to do when those unconstitutional orders come down? How are we going to navigate it? How are we going to do it? Are we going to sabotage it internally? So there is a major angst within the Border Patrol community, retired and active duty within their careers. But there will come a time, and it's coming rapidly, where these agents are going to have to make a determination. Am I going to fight my fellow American, or am I going to just say, go pound sand, government, and I'm standing side by side with them and snub your nose at the government and then use all the judicial powers that you have to work with you? But it's daunting, right? You have a president, you have the secretary of DHS. You have not only that, Seth, you have to understand, because we're so used to talking about the big heads of these agencies. When you go down the org chart of DHS, I call them Mayorkas lieutenants. They're lieutenants that are running these major departments. They are anti-American. They don't even hide it. Their Twitter is defund ICE. The people that are over ICE that run and determine what the budget goes, what their organizational structure is, they have Twitter accounts where they want to defund ICE. That's what's running our government. You have people that are in charge of it's called OPLA. So it basically over making sure that DHS or CBP enforces the immigration law to its strongest point. They're the chairman of immigration. They were prior chairman of immigration chapters of attorneys, defense attorneys for illegal aliens, are now running CBP and DHS. So now you have Border Patrol agents. So you have a total picture. I'm a Border Patrol agent. I'm in Texas. I have my direct supervisors are freaked out. There's 10,000 people inside my holding facility. There's another 10,000 under a bridge. I have AOC. I have Tom Tillis, Sinema, Manchin, McConnell, all calling me racist. I'm a hateful person. Nobody cares. All the media I see demonizes me, and now you're mad at me because I'm following orders and I want to get my pension, but you hate me. Go pound sand. That's their mindset, and that's what's happening throughout law enforcement throughout the country. Look, there's 330 million people in America. Do you know that there's around 600,000 law enforcement officers, state, local, and federal? That's it, 600,000. And they're dwindling by the day because nobody wants to put their life on the line for you, the American citizen that hates us, or the American citizen that sits there quietly as everyone else demonizes us, and you know that what we do is righteous and honorable and moral, and you allow them to talk to us. So you have this giant Ferguson effect where law enforcement officers say, no, I'm going to respond to that call, but instead of getting there in 2 minutes with my gun out, ready to go, it's going to take me 15 minutes. I'm sorry. It's a 15-minute drive. And I'm not getting out of my car until I'm 100% sure that this is a righteous call and I'm not going to get sabotaged or jumped. This is the crazy ass world we live in, Seth. And I want your audience to understand you have patriotic Americans. You have to have a very special skill set to join law enforcement. Okay. This is not CSI Miami with beautiful girls walking around and everybody I'm talking to. And I say, hey, you're under arrest. And they go, oh, you got me, and put a handcuff on me and take me to jail. And it's over in 60 minutes. Real world is I'm getting attacked. I'm breaking bones. I'm getting on workers' comp. I come back. I get sued. I tackle people. I get hurt again. My uniform gets shredded. I have to sew it up, go back. People are yelling at me. I'm not getting paid my overtime because the budget won't allow it. Everyone hates me. And then everyone says, well, I don't understand why law enforcement is committing suicide at an incredible rate. Well, why do you think, America? And if you think that you're safe, you're a fool. You better get your weapon. You better have your Second Amendment, because nobody is coming to help you, America. There's not enough men like me still wearing a uniform that are going to get there in time. Even if I want to get there in time, I can't. Look what happened in New York City yesterday, 2 days ago. A group of illegal aliens attacked 2 police officers in New York City. Attack them, all illegal aliens. And no one does a damn thing. They just watch the officers get attacked, and they all get arrested, 8 of them. And what happens? New York released them. No bail. Illegal aliens. Have we ever heard of flight risk? You just beat up cops. You should be thrown in jail minimum 10 years. That's a long way of saying, America, you are vulnerable. Like you have no idea, America, how you are on the precipice of being destroyed. You have no idea. I really believe that. I believe Americans are either 2 categories, fat and lazy, or just so overworked and so tired they don't have the time to investigate. It doesn't matter what category you fall into. I'm letting you know, and I'm not a doomsday guy. I'm just a data guy. And I lived it. I lived it, Seth. And I'm telling you that this is happening right now, that America is in danger.
What does it look like? Because I think it's your message is really important here. And I think that a lot like the very small population, percentage of people in America that are watching shows like this, that are following people like you, they know. But we're such a small sliver because this isn't Fox News. This isn't mainstream. We're not reaching, 100 million people with this message. It's an important group of people, but it's not enough. I think that what's really important though is understanding what comes next if this continues and understanding where America's really at. 'Cause I think there's a lot of people in America that are still they're looking at the next election and saying, "Oh, okay, well, we get our guy back in there and change things, and let's hope we can get enough people to the polls, and that's how we're going to fix this." And they're just looking at what's happening in America as it's another presidential election. It's let's get the Democrat out, get the Republican in, and we're going to fix things. And I think there's a lot of people that aren't really seeing that America is on a razor blade. They're on the edge of a razor blade. Like that's how critical this time is right now, that we're literally on the edge of our country turning into a Soviet Union, turning into, we see, Pol Pot and the killing fields. Like that's about where we're at. We're at this point where the government is being weaponized against the people. This isn't just another, 4 years. We're at a place where our country has undergone a globalist communist coup. And what we're seeing on the border is just part of that plan. It's a game plan that brought Rome to its knees, being used at 2.0 to bring America to its knees. And so when you look at the potential of what comes next, what happens if this goes unchecked for a few more years? Like, what does America look like? How do we get more Americans to say, holy cow, I need to do something right now because this is getting really dangerous?
Well, you have to look at it from this very thing, and you have to understand we have 9 million, 10 million people have come into the border, okay, under DHS. They're at a 96, 90%, 7% release rate, meaning basically 9.7 out of 10 people that are arrested are released. So everybody's getting released, okay? DHS claims the number to be minimum 85%. When you look at the data, it's closer, like I said, 96, 97%. The vast majority are single adult age male, 18 to about 25. Okay. Millions. Again, millions of these men that you just saw in New York City attack 2 police officers, come out of jail, flipping the bird to everyone, basically tell you to go pound sand. Now, I want you to keep that in your mind. Millions of those men. They're completely dependent on the government. They have no jobs, skills. They're getting free housing, free everything. Let's say that Biden wins and this continues on, or he steals the election again. Nobody even disputes anymore. Isn't it ironic that no one even disputes the 2020 election? It's kind of like a foregone conclusion. Yeah, they stole it. Well, what are you going to do? So he steals it again. So now we go from 9 million, or actually end of Biden's term, to about 12 million people he's arrested and released. Let's do another 12 million, probably increase, but let's say 25 million, and another 25 million absconded through the border. So we're about 50 million. Now we're at about 1 in 3 Americans. 1 in 4 people live in America are not U.S. nationals or citizens. They're just residents, illegal alien residents. 1 in 3, 1 in 4. Keep that in mind. But we cannot sustain this economically. Inflation is skyrocketing. People can't make ends meet. There's angst, there's frustration, and then there will be physical battles because regular Americans will feel completely and utterly disenfranchised, and they only have one recourse then. Our founding fathers said, tyrannical government, you have the moral obligation and moral right to overthrow that government. What does that look like? How does that manifest itself? I don't know. But the only way to overthrow a powerful government is to physically overthrow it. There's no more voting it out. Those days are gone. So what does that look like? That looks like police officers, federal agents. What are you going to do? I'm going to go take care of my family. I'm going to go make sure my family is taken care of and protected. And you're on your own, America. If you think you were worried about getting toilet paper during the pandemic because the supply chains were broken, you're not getting anything. You're going to have mass chaos. So you think a guy's going to drive down your street with a giant Amazon Prime, the new Amazon Prime vehicles, and every mile they're getting held at gunpoint and stolen all their stuff? You think they're going to continue to drive? You think you're going to get your grocery stores filled? And what I see is Americans, and I'm sure you feel this way too, Seth. Everyone thinks, well, that can't happen to America. America's the greatest. We'll never have that happen. Do you think that we were better than Rome? And honestly, do you think that we were more powerful than the great Roman Empire or the Ottoman Empire or Greece? Are you insane? Let's just take a quick modern day snapshot of what this looks like. Let's look at Venezuela, one of the richest, if not the most wealthy nation in South America, Central and South America, now is destitute, and we're now taking in 60 to 70,000 Venezuelans every month, not a year, every month that are escaping. And the question ultimately, to answer your question, is where do we go as Americans? Where is that country that we escape to? And the answer is there is no country. We are it. And to circle back to use Jen, the former crazy House Speaker for President Biden, let's circle back to no one's going to be there for you. No one's going to come help you, America. And you're right. We're on the razor edge. And people just don't know. And I also want to say, Seth, when you talked about the media, we're not Fox News, but we're actually making a bigger reach. People are sharing videos like this by the millions. No, take someone like me that was I watched Fox News every night. My wife and I watched it. We would TiVo it the old TiVo way. I haven't watched 3 minutes of Fox News in the last 120 days. Just don't. I don't need, if I want to listen to somebody, an expert on immigration, I don't want, and I like Sean Hannity, but I don't want to hear what Sean Hannity's interpretation of J.J. Carrell is. I'm smart enough to listen to that immigration guy and come up with my own. I don't need a filter. And that's what podcasting has become. You interview me, you interview Douglas McGregor. I don't need Laura Ingraham to tell me what McGregor said. I want to listen to McGregor tell me exactly what's going on, and I'll make the determination and not your sound bites. But I see it. I look at the data. Look, I have all my computers up. I just ran data numbers today. This has to be discussed, okay? Natural births in America in 2023, the numbers have not come out yet, but they say that the numbers are basically the same from 2021 to 2022. 2023 will be the same. It's about 3.6 million natural U.S. citizen baby births in America, 3.6. 2023, not the FY year, the calendar year of Border Patrol arrests was 3.35. For the first time in the history of America, in December, we had more illegal alien arrests and release than we had natural births. So my point is, the federal government is bringing in more people, illegal aliens, and allowing them to come into our nation than we are reproducing at that rate. Think of what I just said. You have the Democrats have talked about this and said it openly, called the Great Replacement Theory. And they laugh about it. They talk about it. You have Joe Biden on video laughing and talking about how the white race is going to be the majority minority and how great that is. And then you have Chuck Schumer laughing about the Great Reset. These are their words, not my terms, theirs. And I'm telling you the data, and no one's talking about this, Seth. It's almost as if everybody doesn't want to know about it. And again, I'm not talking about the getaways. If I talk about the getaways, we're looking at 2 foreign illegal aliens into America per every birth. Now, let's fast forward in a decade. How does America look, people? How does America look? And the answer is we're seeing a dynamic demographic shift. It's not a racist, not a race-based or ethnic-based. It is a demographic shift of citizens versus non-citizens. In America, it does not even matter if you don't like the way I speak, you don't like me wearing a black shirt, you don't like the way that I say things because I'm former law enforcement. The data does not lie. This has now become a math problem. If I import, by Joe Biden's own numbers, not even talking about getaways, 12 million people into America that are not American citizens, you cannot argue that there will be a demographic change. There is, by its own nature, a demographic change. Are you okay with that, America? I'm not okay with it. But it's not a demographic change and then we all sing kumbaya. It's a demographic change with incredible social and cultural issues that will arise and will have to be addressed. And I don't think America's ready to address it. I don't. I think that we're conditioned to be afraid to be called a xenophobe, a racist, a Nazi. And I don't think there's enough of us that say, yeah, I've already been called all of those things. I don't care because I know I'm not. And I know that they've watered those terms down. But there's still a significant majority of Americans that recoil at the thought of being called a racist. But you're going to have to speak up, America. This is no longer a time to be a fence sitter or I'm going to sit on the side and watch these people. The people that do not do anything, the people that sit on the side will be the first casualties of this war because the crazy left will see you as the most vulnerable and they will attack you and you will suffer the most. The weak always suffer the most, not physically weak, the mentally, spiritually weak always suffer the quickest and the most painful. And it will happen to you, America.
And I think it's really on us to be prepared as well. I'd say especially the men that are at the heads of the households, teaching your family how to use a gun. Um, there's a lot of strong women too following these shows that I'm really impressed because maybe the men are busy, they're working, and the women, they get a chance to watch this. They're concerned about their grandchildren and their children. A lot of them, it's amazing. They're going out, they're taking concealed carry classes, etc. Learn how to protect your family. Get a food supply, right? Get food in case you can't leave your house to go to the grocery store, like you talked about. These are very real scenarios. Pull cash out of the bank. Have some cash stuffed under the bed or hidden behind the drywall or wherever it is. Have some gold and silver if you can. I mean, this is the time. Figure out your water sources. Get to know your neighbors. Build community. I mean, this is where America's at. That we have to take responsibility for this. So before we sign off, JJ, I know that we're talking a little bit about the importance of podcasting and getting more information out there. And I know that you have your own podcast with Brian O'Shea, which I want to pull up because I want to encourage all of the people that are watching and listening to this to follow what you're doing directly. Obviously, you come on, you're an incredible guest. Your videos go far and wide when I have you on the show, but you've also got your own podcast. This is the Daily Clout Rumble page. You can see right here. It's the Unrestricted Invasion. You're also, if I believe correctly, on dailyclout.io. You go to the homepage there. I'll put these links below. You come down here to commentators. And again, Unrestricted Invasion with Brian O'Shea, who I've had on before. Fantastic guest. Excellent intelligence, background, etc. And obviously yourself. What would you, if you had to say, pitch somebody on saying, hey, come listen to the podcast, come subscribe, what would you tell people?
I would tell you to tune in to hear two men talk like men about what is happening to America. Unfiltered, raw, to the point, always data-based, always researched, no flying off. If I tell you something's happening, I'm going to give you an example of how it's happening, why. Same thing with Brian, credible former intel analyst embedded with special forces, former a veteran of our armed forces. So two men that are talking directly to you about what's happening in America without being afraid of being called a racist, xenophobe. This is what is happening. And just two patriots that are trying to get the word out.
Awesome. Well, JJ, thank you again for coming on. I always appreciate, enjoy you coming on. You have really important information you're bringing to people. Again, I highly encourage folks to follow your work directly. I'll put those links in the description. Listen to your podcast. you're part of Daily Clout. Naomi Wolf, she's fantastic. Great team over
Yes.
there. I really appreciate what you guys are all doing. And yeah, I mean, we'll probably have you back on soon for an update. Unfortunately, it probably won't be a positive update. Hopefully it is, but we got to keep watching this because I agree with what you'd said earlier that this is the greatest threat. I mean, it really is. It's a massive threat. And if this becomes the reason America descends into civil war, it's exactly how they want it to go. And I think that
Mhm.
though a lot of us we're tired, we're hungry, we're worn out, we're angry, we have to still figure out a way to hold our ground peacefully because as soon as if we start shooting off stuff, it's exactly what they
Mhm.
want. And before you know it, we've got martial law, we've got the military moving in. It's going to get really ugly really fast, and we can't let that happen.
I agree. And thanks for having me back on to talk about and giving me the wide berth to really dive into this instead of being just on the surface because there is so layered, so complex, and it's layered and complex for a reason. As you said, this is what they want. And this is a very scary, vulnerable time for America and for Americans. So thanks for allowing me to speak like this.
Absolutely. That's what I appreciate about you. You're not. I don't bring you on for sound bites. I bring you on for that deep discussion of like, what's this look like, and I appreciate you for that. So, JJ, thanks again for coming on. We'll do this again soon.
Thank you.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I've now got a really important update with Dr. Kirk Elliott. You've been probably watching what's happening on the border. There's been some critical things. What we're seeing emerging is state governments dividing among themselves. So we have roughly half the nation that's kind of teaming up against the federal government. And what we just witnessed with the Biden administration was actually the weaponization of economic sanctions that looks like it's targeting the states, in particular Texas, that are leading this initiative of really going back up against the federal government. So this is some pretty significant news. This is a pretty short interview, but it's full of very important information. So, folks, please enjoy the interview with Dr. Kirk Elliott. Kirk, as usual, it's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be back.
Very much so. I wish it was somewhat better circumstances in terms of the overall state of our world and our country and this rogue government, which we're now seeing. Like, if you look at what's playing out in Texas, I mean, it's kind of the beginnings of. I'm not sure if you'd call it necessarily a civil war, but of a war of states versus federal government. I mean, it's very significant, which would probably turn into civil war if it goes the natural course, because you would have the states that are against the federal government's overreach, and you'd have the states that are for the government, federal government's overreach. Uh, it's not pretty, but there's some interesting news about the economic aspect of this war that you and I were just talking about before we started recording. So walk us through what's happening with that.
Well, it's I think it's more than a battle of states versus the federal government, right? I think it's an ideological battle as well. Because I was reading yesterday how this group, the Army of God, is like caravanning down to Texas to like it's like the truckers caravan, right? So they're going down to have personal citizens help defend the border. Well, I saw what did they classify those truckers as yesterday? Christian terrorist organization, right? So it's like, okay, I see what's coming next, right? It's going to be mayhem and a battle of ideologies and separation of people groups and religious groups, and and they're using Texas as the catalyst for that in the border, right?
And they're saying
So
this far right convoy is calling for civil war. Of course, it's their fault, right?
of course they're calling for civil. I mean, they're not calling for civil war. They're going down to help protect the border, right? But what is NBC and MSNBC and all the talking heads on mainstream media saying this is a dangerous, dangerous Christian terrorist organization? It's like what? What? They're just trying to help Texas protect its border, right? And so, anyways, you this is the ideological battle that's going to be playing itself out, manifesting itself big. So, what is the Biden administration doing to retaliate against Texas? I mean, he's using politics as a weapon, and they're weaponizing politics. So, just over the weekend, this news came out and it's from the White House. This is on whitehouse.gov. Their fact sheet. The Biden-Harris administration announces a temporary pause on pending approvals of liquefied natural gas exports. So what is America really good at? Oil and gas. I mean, truly, we're really good at oil and gas. So what is Biden doing? He's basically putting economic sanctions on U.S. companies, saying you can't export liquefied natural gas to Asia or to Europe or anywhere for that matter, right? So usually economic sanctions are held for like rogue terrorist nations like Iran or Russia or something like that. It's like, hey, we don't like what they did in Russia. It's like, we don't like what you're doing in Ukraine. We're going to put all of these economic sanctions on your country. They do that against Iran all the time. He just did it on his own people in America. One of the most productive things that we have as a country, oil and gas, he basically halted any new applications for exports. Man, this is getting really ugly really fast, because that will kill the economy. If we can't export oil and gas, I mean, we don't use it all. We export most of it. This is not going to be a good economic move moving forward. But here's where I don't think they care. I really don't think they care. Ideology is basically trumps or is a higher placement than economic freedom or people's livelihood, right? They want to send a message here that it's our way or the highway. You're going to go with this globalist ideology rather than states' rights. And if you don't like it, well, then we're just going to impact your wallets. I mean, this is what they're doing.
Well, look at even the first sentence of this. This is the White House fact sheet. It says, President Biden has been clear that climate change is the existential threat of our time, and we must act with the urgency it demands to protect the future for generations to come. It's like, how do you like, okay, climate change is the existential threat. It's not the terrorists pouring across our borders. It's not the mutilation of the genders and the children. I mean, it's this. And so one question that I have is, given what's happening in Texas, do you think that this is some sort of underhanded attack on Texas and the oil companies and gas companies? Because Texas is for a lot of ways, it's the center of oil and gas in America. Obviously, other places like Alaska, et cetera, but you always think Texas is big oil.
Well, I think that because of the timing of this, it's like, okay, it is what it is. I mean, they've been talking about climate change forever, but why stop exports of gas to other countries like earlier this week? Well, it does impact Texas a lot. And so I started thinking, I mean, this might be kind of a reactionary or radical thing to say, right? But it's like, why would they do that? I mean, you look at Texas, you look at Alaska, you look at Oklahoma, you look at Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Colorado, Arizona, a lot of natural gas producing states. Who in the world is going to vote for Biden if he kills their jobs? Well, I'm thinking, I don't think they care, because I think in their mind, they've already got the election thing figured out, the voting thing figured out, right? But so it probably doesn't matter to them. This ideology of this globalist super state where they can control every aspect of our lives through a new central bank digital currency that's coming, the control of people's income, ideology-based spending, where you can live, when you can travel. Now, possibly new pandemics coming up, like what we've seen in Colorado with the Ebola vaccine. I mean, really? All of Denver Health took the Ebola vaccine, the big hospital in downtown Denver, and the lab that's like manufacturing and testing the stupid Ebola vaccine is in Colorado Springs, 60 miles down the road from us. And it's like, what? And then Governor Polis comes out with Immunize Colorado. And it's like, why in the world are they preparing for a next pandemic that doesn't exist yet? And they're saying it's possibly going to be a hemorrhagic fever, right? It's like, what is going on here? And because they were asked at the hospital, why are they doing this? And said, well, we have to prepare for the next pandemic. How do they know it's Ebola? Right? I mean, so you've got that kind of people control. They motivate by fear, they control by fear, same way that they're doing it in Texas by saying, we're going to impact your income. If you don't comply, we're not going to let all of these amazing US companies export LNG or liquefied natural gas to Europe or Asia or anywhere else. I mean, they are controlling by fear and what they can take away, which a better way to get a populace to actually comply is the opposite spirit. It's a spirit of love. It's a spirit of freedom. It's like, you work hard, look at all this stuff that you're going to get, right? It's completely the opposite of how they're managing things.
And so, how long do you think these sanctions will last? And which may be a difficult thing to answer, but
I
like,
think it's almost impossible to answer because I can't even believe they're there to begin with.
and what effect will this have in the long term?
My word. So you take away our ability to do what we're best at as a country. I think oil and gas is one of them. You've got all the pipelines, you've got all the refineries, you've got all the Gulf oil that's coming in all these states, Texas and Oklahoma, North Dakota, Ohio, Pennsylvania. I mean, this is a lot of jobs. I think the economic fallout is disastrous. And so what you're going to see is loss of tax revenue. You're going to see loss of wages. You're going to see companies, mom and pop store owners, is in a lot of small towns and big cities in Texas and Oklahoma. It's like, they're not going to have any revenue streams coming because people are losing their jobs. They're not going to be able to afford. I mean, this is, to me, the weaponization of politics like nothing I've ever seen. Can you remember a time when a US president actually did economic sanctions on his own people? I mean, I can't think of a time. I really can't think of a time. I can think of when they did it against Libya, Iran, Russia, some of these other rogue terrorist nations. They do that all the time as a weapon to fight terrorism, but they're doing it here. Oh, but they're already calling that caravan going down to Texas the Army of God, a Christian terrorist organization. So the rhetoric is increasing pretty rapidly, and it's based on ideology. It's truly based on, do you believe in the globalist agenda or not? And if you don't, we are going to hurt you economically or with any means necessary, right? It's like, we'll shut down your business. We're going to make you scared of a pandemic. We're going to make sure that your income is not there. We're going to tell you when you can travel and where you can't travel based on a climate change agenda. I mean, this is just complete loss of freedom.
It's also crazy the timing of this, considering the Obama, his movie that just recently came out, I Leave the World Behind, which was all about civil war, all about basically creating so much tension and confusion. Eventually, something pops off, and you've got civil war. There's another big movie, literally called Civil War, that's coming
Right.
out soon. I mean, you can see their programming with this. You can see it, and if you look at those, I mean, if rewind, say, a couple weeks or a month or so, and you're watching this Obama movie, thinking about, gosh, civil war in America, that'd be crazy, and here we are. I mean, you can see that. Like, I pray to God that we won't have civil war in America, because I think it becomes the pretext for martial law, for the UN coming in, or just it opens us up for that kind of chaos. Is you're just inviting an enemy nation like China or Russia to come in, Iran. You're inviting them to come in on American soil if we're like that. So I hope that isn't what happens. But I mean, you seem to be pretty critical of Biden, but the GDP just saw 2% growth, right? I mean, isn't Bidenomics like really working for us, working for the average man?
I mean, it's amazing to have that 2% growth, right? At least it's growth. However, it's not really growth. I think that's kind of fudging the numbers a lot of it, not even a little bit. So, as we've talked about numerous times on this show, inflation is actually unofficially hovering around 15% plus, because the way that Clinton changed the way how we measure it in 1996. But you go back to 1983, when interest rates for people that bought a house back then, they'll remember it was 18% on a 30-year mortgage. It was bonkers. But why? because inflation was 14.3%. The only way you slow down inflation with interest rates is if the interest rate's higher. Well, when Clinton changed everything, to artificially understate inflation, I mean, it's a lot. So inflation is not like 3.8% that they say it is. If you go back and use the same exact metrics that they did in 1983, we're hovering at around 15%. So that means interest rates have to go higher than 15 for it to make a difference. But here's where GDP, gross domestic product, is a reflection of everything you and I and everybody else in this country buy things at retail stores at retail prices that's manufactured in America. That's everything that we make here that we buy here at retail prices. So if inflation is 15% and we're buying stuff at those inflated prices, it should reason that GDP should grow at 15% too, right? But it's not. It's at 2%. That was huge difference. And just that tells us that the economy is actually shrinking rapidly rather than growing. But it's actually worse than that. So to get that 2% growth, there's a lot of debt. So let's play the story out. Let's say you and your wife are sitting at the dinner table and you have this eureka moment, this great idea. And you say, hey, I'm going to start a business because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm amazing. And I'm going to spend $250,000 to make $100,000. What's she going to do to you? She's going to say, Seth, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. You're not thinking with a clear mind, right? You must be breathing the air in Colorado would be my guess. But here's where this is exactly what the government's doing, because the numbers that just came out, it's $2.50 of new debt to create every $1 of GDP growth. So $2.50 to create $1 of growth. That's the same as the story where $250,000 to create $100,000. It doesn't make sense. But this is why we have the debt that we have. And if they're creating that much debt to create that little growth, that tells us that something is very inefficient, that it's not working. People don't actually have money to spend because of Bidenomics. This is why I'm critical of Bidenomics. People don't have money to spend on it, so therefore they have to create debt to have the appearance that the economy is clicking. But it's not. It's absolutely not. And I mean, if you had to create 50 cents of debt to create $1 of growth, that would be a good return, right? It'd be doubling what you spent to get a good return. They're 250% more, $2.50 to create $1 of growth. That's ridiculous. That's awful. And that's what Bidenomics has created.
But how much longer can this continue? Because if you look at stock market, seems like it's doing well. Yes, we know that almost everything that, whether it's the White House press secretary or their announcements or the mainstream media, almost everything they're telling us is a lie, especially about the economy. And if you look around, it's like America's not booming. This isn't like the 90s, or this isn't, during and under Trump, where everything's just going well and there's this optimistic spirit. I mean, it seems like it's the opposite. But I mean, the question I have is, like, how much longer can they hold this back? Because it just seems like all of the indicators, all of the triggers that would be needed to, basically to really crush the market, to cause great poverty here in America, they're all there. So, I mean, do you think that it's like this dam, and they're just plugging every single hole until they get to the election? That way they can't. And then it's like, if, say, Trump gets in, they pull all their fingers out, the whole economy collapses. It's Trump's fault. Or if Biden gets in another 4 years, which we all hope not, then either way, it's like, well, say it all collapses, and well, it's a second term, so does it matter anyway?
I mean, we can speculate all day long, right? I kind of don't think. I mean, Biden is not strong right now, and nobody likes Kamala, not even the Democrats, right? So maybe you have it get really, really bad till about August, and then it's too late to go through any kind of primaries or caucus system or anything like that. So maybe then they just replace him with somebody else administratively. It's like, he's unfit to serve, health-wise, whatever. right? And so then you bring in somebody else like a Michelle Obama or Hillary or somebody that they really want, but you have to wait until there's hardly enough time to actually do anything about it. But that could happen if there's such an extreme downturn in the economy that people say, fine, somebody's got to fix it, right? Um, so I don't know, but I don't think that this can last. I actually don't think it can last till the election. I really don't. We're at the point of critical mass. We're at the point of economic upheaval leading to social disarray and chaos. Now you've got the mayhem going on in Texas. And like you talked about, it's possibly pre-programming us for Civil War type mentality. There's movies coming out about that. It's like, I don't see how this can last much longer at this rate of decay that we're seeing in American society. So I would say
Yeah.
before the election. I
I'm in
don't
the
know
same
when.
boat. Yeah, I agree.
I'm not God. I don't control the markets. I don't know, but I don't think this can last until the election. I think something will happen before that where people will willingly want to give up their freedoms, maybe even willingly give up their right to a vote at this point, because you just got to have order out of chaos, right? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know, but I don't see it lasting till then.
But how is it that so I want to kind of shift to something as it relates, because we're talking about, the stock market, et cetera. And so here's an article. I want you to help explain this, because like the stock market's booming. Like I mean, I can't say it's booming, but it's doing well, right? Yet, and tech stocks specifically are doing well. But there's also these massive layoffs, right? So here they're saying that the CNBC article in January, close to 24,000 workers have been laid off, and this is specifically from this tech industry. So how is it that they're having mass layoffs, yet there's still their stock is still going up? There's still investor confidence. Help me make sense of this, because I think this obviously, I mean, I'm not a stock market guy, but I know that a lot of these core tech stocks are the ones that are actually holding up and propping up the entire market, right? The entire stock market's riding on the back of a couple of key stocks, right?
Well, I'm not a stock market guy either, but I do understand fundamentals of what causes it to grow and shrink, right? So if share prices are sky high, that would tell us that there's a lot of profits there. What are profits? It's revenues minus expenses, right? So are there revenues going through the roof? No, people aren't spending any money. Any revenues that they have, I would say right now, are stimulus money, right? So, but expenses have to be coming down, because how can you have sky high stock prices and yet lay off 24,000 plus people in 1 month, just in one industry? Well, as I was thinking about it, it's like, oh, I think I know the answer. And you and I have talked about this numerous times, and now we're seeing the fruit on that tree kind of manifest itself. So I think this is what Kurzweil, former, way back in the day, Google, chief technology officer kind of a guy, basically came up with the singularity concept, which is the blending and merging of man and machine, and the machine kind of wins, right? It's like Terminator, the first movie where Skynet, and you had the machines that rose up and try to kill their creators, the humans, right? Because they got smarter. I think this is what's happening. I think what's happening in the tech sector is all of these jobs have been replaced by computers, artificial intelligence. And, companies might like that, because it's like, well, if I hire a computer, I don't have to pay the computer. There's no benefits that I have to pay. I'm never going to get sued for harassment or anything like that, or discrimination, right? So why not hire a computer? Hire a computer, right? You just replace a person with a computer. But there's unintended consequences of that. Number one, yeah, companies might like it because they get more profitable, as the stock prices are saying, but 24,000 people got laid off. So what's the unintended consequence? You don't pay a computer, so therefore there's no income tax revenue for the government. A computer doesn't go to Best Buy after work to buy a new LCD TV for the family, and so there's no sales tax revenue, right? Computers don't procreate. They don't have babies. So there's no growing of society, right? And because of that, they're not buying gas for, to put in the minivan to take the baby computers to the soccer games, right? There's no groceries, cereal that are being purchased for the family. There's all of the stuff that's not being done. Oh, and computers, because they don't make money, they're not going to go buy houses either. So now the housing market's going to come down because nobody's buying, and property tax revenues come down. See, the domino effect is every revenue stream by the government is being diminished and going away. But yet, what's going to happen with all these 24,000 people that got laid off? They're going to go to the government and say, hey, I need unemployment benefits. I need handouts. I need welfare. I need Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, whatever. And the government's going to be scratching their head and thinking, oh, we forgot about this. We're all excited about this new technology that's going to control people and all that. But now that they want benefits, we don't have the income streams to provide for it. So what comes next? They'll just print their way out of it because it's the only thing left. Can't raise taxes anymore because people are already tapped out. So the only thing left is to continue to print. I'm convinced, Seth, that this is why the Fed, even though they promised all kinds of rate decreases for this year, they paused. Yeah, 2 days ago when they had this meeting, they decided they're going to pause interest rates rather than lower them because I think they know what's coming with all these layoffs of people not working, and they're losing government revenues, and they're going to have to print money. That creates inflation. So somewhere down the road, they're going to have to keep raising interest rates to slow that down. So, but the fact that they didn't lower them when they've been promising, Jerome Powell, Janet Yellen, Biden himself, we've won the war on inflation. We get to start lowering interest rates next year. And what a great time to do it during an election year, right? It's not panning out like that. At least it doesn't look like it is. Now, they might have one rate decrease so they don't lose base, right? It's like, well, we said we're going to do it. We better do it at least once. But boy, I think there's so much printing of money that's about to come as the economy comes to a screeching halt or slowing down. And we're not even considering the strain on big cities in America, like here in Denver, the border issue, right? It's almost to me like the border has moved up to Denver. We've got so many migrants in Denver now. 710,000 people inside city limits of Denver. I mean, metropolitan areas, millions, but 710,000 in Denver. How many migrants are here? 40,000, increasing by over 200 a day. It's like, what are they going to do with all of them? So here's where in Denver, the news just came out that they used to have shelters for the homeless people and for the migrants coming in, but now there's so many of them that they can no longer stay for 38 days, which was the old number. It's now 8. So starting, I think February 2nd, it's now 8 days, which means there's going to be like 40,000 migrant families that hit the streets, living on the streets. They don't know what to do. So already this issue is costing upwards of 10 to 15% of the entire Denver budget, 10 to 15% to take care of them. So now they're asking for more federal money. It's like, we've got all these people, but now it's like, well, then if you don't like it, they like it for political reasons, but they don't like it for financial reasons. You can't have it both ways, right? So here's the horrible pickle. Municipalities are going to be strapped for cash, state governments, the federal government, for all the reasons we talked about earlier, reducing, income streams through taxation. It's like, man, what comes next? Massive, massive, massive inflation to fund all of this socialist communist garbage that's happening in America. That's what I think comes next, Seth, is inflation like we haven't even seen yet.
It's just the natural course, unfortunately. I mean, it is being realistic. And so for people that are concerned, whether it's thinking, okay, hey, stocks are doing great right now, but there's going to be that day when, say, Dow drops 600 points, and the next day it's 700, 800, and it's like, okay, now the bottom falls out. Whether it's that inflation, through money printing, and I agree that, to me, 2024, I'm very optimistic about the course for mankind, especially the good people. I'm optimistic for the good people on Earth, but I also think that there's going to be a lot of chaos. And so, we're in a place where we're really trying to hunker down for what comes this year, and then following, next couple of years, really taking an
Yeah.
audit of food supply, water sources, backup energy, any number of things like that. So financially, I know we've talked a lot about precious metals, but where is the safe haven, right? It's like if you know the storm is coming, what do you do?
Well, you have to go into something that's real, something that's tangible, like gold or silver. But I would do silver. Silver at hit $22 and like 13 cents an ounce last week. Well, I'm not a technical trader. I could care less about charts, but to them, to chartists and technical traders, that was a really, really good harmonic convergence of price, is what they called it, where this is a resistance point and it bounced off of that. And now it's at 23 and some change. Literally, it's up almost 5% in a week, right? So it hits these technical support levels and bounces up. So what do we have? The convergence of fundamental forces, inflationary pressures, political chaos, unsustainable debt, all of that with a technical buying point. Now they're all in harmony with each other. And I don't know how you're going to really stop the growth of silver moving forward, too, because everything is now lined up properly to get to that point. See, this is what's exciting for everybody who's getting out of harm's way. They have this huge frown on their face and say, this economy stinks and we're losing our freedoms. I don't know what to do. And they're awful, right? But yet, this is an amazing thing that people can take advantage of. Those exact fundamentals that are causing a reduction of your freedoms, you can actually cause that to be an increase in your finances, right? So this is where we can't change a lot of things, but what we can do is change that, because it's a singular action. It's just you deciding, I'm going to make a switch out of my IRA, out of my old 401k, out of my bank account, allocate into something that's real, something that's tangible, and just watch what starts to happen. I mean, it's amazing.
And what's the best way to go about that? I know we've got our website here, goldwithseth.com, which will be in the link or in the description to the show, basic form there. How's that work?
So that's the easiest. You just go to that form, fill it out, and one of my schedulers will call you. So be on the lookout for a call from Denver, 720, because they'll schedule you with one of our consultants that'll dig in deep, answer your questions, hear you and listen to your fears, your dreams, your aspirations, your goals, and help craft out a strategy moving forward to take advantage of these trends rather than those trends taking advantage of you. That's what we'll do. And if you want to just call, you can just simply call our phone number, 720-605-3900, and say that Seth sent you. Same result will happen. You'll talk to one of our, schedulers. They'll ask you a few questions, get on the calendar with one of our consultants. Same exact scenario. One is just fill out the form online, goldwithseth.com, or call us. And then we go from there. And what's exciting to me is that's where our journey together begins, not ends. Right? Because we'll let you know then moving forward, once we've crafted out this strategy for success, when to buy, when to sell, when to reallocate, when to lock in profits. We don't expect you to watch the markets like a hawk. That's what we do. And so that's where our journey together begins.
And this thing too is that it's something. This is why I enjoy having you on. I enjoy working with you, is because it's something I believe in. Like I really do. Is as much as I believe in telling a friend, hey, do you have a couple months worth of storable food? You should probably get that. And I'm not telling
Yeah.
people, hey, dump your entire savings into this. Like, no, it's like take a portion of it, set it aside, put it into that silver, tuck it away, bury it in the backyard, put it behind a piece of drywall when you're remodeling, whatever it is, and you just kind of forget about it, and just
Right.
know that when that rainy day comes, you're already in the place that you have that. And that's my philosophy with a lot of things. I think it's really about being like be difficult to kill. Like the government, the elites, they want to kill us. So our job is to be really, really difficult to kill. Be
Right.
know how to protect yourself, know how to feed your family, have independence from their banking systems, which they're going to use to control us. Have seeds, know how to grow food. To me, this is just part of one of those boxes that you check, and you're doing a
Agree.
great job helping people with that. So, Kirk, it's always great having you on. I appreciate you giving me the time. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.